Hey everybody,
Right.
that's Jeff Gable.
Hi, everyone.
I'm not sure how I'm going to cut it, but I'm sure there's the makings of some kind of podcast snippet or something. Uh, Let me just finish this note.
I'm going to be partaking of that sweet, sweet stuff throughout the podcast,
As
or
will I.
the interview.
As will I. I'm looking for the right emoji for this.
Give me just a second.
Yep.
There we go. I think that lighting's a little bit better.
Yeah, that's interesting how you have your room set up. First of all, it's a very big room, it seems.
It is. So I actually share this office with my wife. She is a music teacher, and this has long been her music studio. So actually, if you on this side, that's actually a piano, and her it's got a kind of a. So
Oh
this is
yeah,
her
okay.
desk over there.
What is that, like a shawl that you have hanging on a
Yeah,
chair?
it's like a blanket over the piano, kind of to deaden a little bit of the sound and just make it look a little more handsome.
Is
The
Mrs.
back of
Gable home?
I'm sorry.
Is she home?
She is, but she's not here. So we have a detached garage with kind of this mother-in-law quarters above it. It's
I would
perfect.
think that it would add a degree of color that we won't see in any other podcast if you were to play some intro music for us. Come on.
She's not a piano player, but she is a singer, so she could
All right,
yeah, she
I'll do a duet with her.
that would be lovely sometime. We should arrange that.
Not today, huh?
Not today. She's with our son. He's 2 years old and he does not stop moving. So she's with him right now.
What I'm hearing is more and more entertainment. So you don't have any slides. You don't want to have me share the screen or anything.
No, not particularly.
By the way, I saw that I have been describing you the way that I described you last year, as someone who specializes in embedded software. But I see now on your LinkedIn, you have changed it to firmware. What's
Yes.
the difference?
So embedded software is kind of this general class of software that's running on embedded devices. So on the medical device, for instance. Um, and just as part of my market research in terms of surveying people, firmware seemed to be a more recognizable term for that same thing. So firmware is software that does not run on your computer. It's running on a dedicated device, and often the particular type of embedded software that I write, which is running real time on microcontrollers as opposed to on embedded Linux running user applications, that's even more often referred to as firmware. So
Stuff gets confusing real fast.
it's still
People
software.
don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's still software, but when you say the word software, people think, oh, you write, desktop applications or for
You write
servers
code.
or for the cloud, and I'm trying to specify it down to I write the code that runs on the medical device doing real-time safety critical operations.
Although I will say, you've done the homework, I haven't.
Hmm.
When I hear embedded software, I don't think computer. I don't think desktop and phone apps.
Right, but a lot of even within embedded software, there's a general dividing line between things that run on embedded Linux, and that would be things that run your like the user interface applications on a medical device. Like if they have a little touch screen and you're controlling and setting up the test you're going to run on some IVD instrument. Um, as opposed to the lower level microcontrollers that are actually controlling motors or heaters. That's the software I write. Embedded software is kind of that umbrella, and people would come to me and say, hey, can you write this embedded Linux software? And I say, I can, but that's not my expertise. It's not my focus. So I'm really more focused on the real-time aspect.
So to reiterate what you just said, if there's a touch screen for user interface on my medical device, that ain't you. But if it's something in the device to make sure it doesn't overheat, that's you.
Correct. That's a good way to put it.
You're welcome to use it. In fact, what's your website? Let me take a look.
It's really easy, jeffgable.com.
That is easy. Some idiot squatting on joehage.com.
Oh, no.
Now, who is that Jeff Gable? That Jeff Gable doesn't look anything like the Jeff Gable with whom I'm speaking.
He might in the future. This Jeff Gable may go away.
That Jeff Gable actually looks older than this Jeff Gable. You've not dyed your hair. This looks great.
No. It's just kind of a trick of the lighting, or yeah, I'm not sure what it is. Though my beard is quite gray and red. It's very mottled. So if I dye anything, it may be my beard.
You know, the marketer in me is evaluating and judging you right now, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a first cut. So, but I would love your candid feedback at some point.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is use sans serif, not serif fonts.
Well, okay. I like sans serif for headlines and serif for text, but
I'll
you
leave
don't.
that to a designer to figure out. I'll ask my guy who's superlative, but it's simply easier to read online, and there's nothing design-wise you're going to tell me that's going to shake my faith in making it easier to read.
Fair enough. Hey, recognize that?
I do recognize that. You published it a year later.
Yeah. So there's not a lot of articles yet, but more content is coming. Hi, Phil.
Can we hear Phil yet? Not yet.
I can't hear Phil yet.
You know what you can do is you can, hey Mark, you can you can add the slides here and take the whole transcript. I can give you the code for it. You know how I have it on my site where it's your entire transcript?
Well, I actually developed the transcript for you, so I have the transcript.
Ah, well, go ahead. Wait, do you have it in already as HTML?
No, but I have Markdown. I can convert it very easily. So
don't waste your time. I'll give it to you.
All right.
Where's the?
No, like my blog engine uses Markdown, so I don't use the raw HTML.
Oh. So you
Hi guys, I'm actually
about to hand it to you. You don't want it.
Yeah.
All right.
I finally figured out how to unmute my microphone.
Well done, sir. Nice to hear you.
Hi, Phil. Nice to meet you over GoToMeeting.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Jeff.
Mark Fine's mic is on as well. You can say hello.
Greetings from Camino Island.
Hi, Mark.
I met a former Camino Island resident last night at a retirement center.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And who knows? You keep playing your cards this way, I could introduce you to the retirement center and you can join her.
I used to volunteer and play piano there.
Not true.
True.
Well, not the same retirement center I went to.
Which one did you go to?
Fairwinds in Redmond.
Oh, I thought you said it was on Camino. Sorry.
No, she moved to Fairwinds in Redmond.
Oh, got it. Yeah, because there's a retirement center here on Camino.
It's where my mother-in-law used to live. I became quite comfortable and friendly there, and I've talked with the social director, and I have my chorus, my little chorus, practice there on Thursday nights. I said, we can either rent a church and sing to ourselves, or we can sing in your activity room and people can take a night off from Jeopardy. And she's like, sure.
Cool.
So every night we have a few octogenarians just sit in and listen to all of our mistakes.
They enjoy it. It's
Mhm.
fun. Yeah.
Phil, you wrote me. You're doing something in 3 weeks,
I am doing something in 3 weeks. Yeah.
Elliot.
Oh, that was the dog, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm running an event here in London for mostly for academics actually. There's a big pressure at the moment through the funding councils to get tech into the market, and if I see one more thing that somebody says I've made a medical device, and I have to educate them, so I've decided to get everybody together in one place and explain them what Design for Compliance is about, and that's what I'm running here in London in 3 weeks' time.
Elliot and I put ourselves on mute there for a moment.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Dr. Philip Marsden, I didn't
Yeah,
know
so
that about you.
Yeah, as long as you don't call me Dr. Phil, I don't mind.
Honey, is he a thing over there too?
Kind of, not as much. Yeah, so this is part of there's an initiative here at the Institute of Physics, so with the Institute of Physics of the United Kingdom and Ireland. So here, again, one thing that we're actually united on, that supports historically supported academic physics, but more than 50% of us are actually industrialists. So we're trying to push that agenda now, and this is part of that. And medtech, is pretty high up there.
I suspect then you have little or no say over the design of this site, and so I'll spare you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
The registration process is cryptic.
That's a good word, and far less judgmental than the one I would have used.
What was your word? Shit, because I've already passed that on to the guys there.
No, I'm on a recorded
Let's not hold
line.
any punches
I
here.
behave myself.
Okay, right. Because I was like, every other event that I ever go to is through Eventbrite. Just do it through Eventbrite. That's easy. Everybody can do that. It's on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they've got their own system. So
I'm happy to have folks learn about it. You're welcome to share it, but let me ask you to wait a day or two because I need to do some site-wide maintenance. I've got to figure out, and we'll talk about this. Let's do it after 9 o'clock my time because Jeff has a hard stop today. About redesigning the channels to make. I don't want everyone, every time somebody joins, have somebody in the general go, "Welcome, Bill," and that becomes a message to 54 people. So I haven't quite figured out how to message all of this, but I suspect I'll be making some etiquette videos and figuring out some rules that were not previously available to me until earlier this week when I plunked down some hard cash for additional storage and functionality that I have yet to discover. But
I remember you sent out your announcement about that right after I said, "Hello, whoever it was."
Yeah.
So 5 minutes later, you were like, "Okay, we're going to change things up."
It wasn't that. I was writing it anyhow, but here's a short list of the things that I've yet to read and figure out that I can do here.
Boom.
So your dutiful servant has a little bit of work to do. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
All right. How are you?
Good.
Now, actually, you two are, everyone but one Brit is a 10X alumnus at one time or another. But I don't think any of the three of you were ever there at the same time. So you've not met Mark or Michelle in person.
Correct.
But we can fix that in April. Anyhow, so let's talk about firmware, which you educated me earlier before everyone joined.
Sure.
Which is, I guess, an engineer. Well, let me ask Mark because I know he's a marketer, but you've got a strong engineering background, right, Mark?
Say again?
You have a strong engineering background as well as being a marketer, right?
I'm actually a public health guy.
Oh.
But I've been doing engineering for 30 years. I kind of learned on the job,
I would say that that's a pretty solid education, 30 years worth. So Jeff was saying that the term firmware resonates more than embedded software with people who don't really understand what he does.
Hmm.
Your take?
I use them both.
I had not heard of firmware before, but
Engineers use that a lot.
Well, and Joe, you're a good data point. So it's you
I'm
know
a data point.
firmware won by a nose. So I am still collecting data. That's part of the point. So.
And from a what does Jeff do for a living standpoint, and I don't know how big your LinkedIn following is, but that's a great way to engage people with an interactive question.
That's a good point.
I don't know what the question is, what makes more sense, or what would you call, in fact, what would you call the guy who writes the software for, someone's going to say a jerk and everyone will go, ha ha, put a smiley face.
Exactly right.
And someone else will say firmware and so on. But if you're able to get that conversation going, then everyone who looks at it or comments will infect their timelines with, oh, there's a guy who does that.
And that's kind of a interesting concept to me right now, because I'm going through
You're the only one we can't see.
I'm putting my makeup on right now.
Okay, fair enough.
When I got my makeup finished, I'll put it on.
It's well worth the wait, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Lord.
So I'm going through an AI response with the FDA right now on a imaging system where it's the probes and there's new software running the probes.
Okay.
My customer doesn't make the probes. They are taking somebody else's probes that already has software that runs on a Windows-based platform, and they made an Android-based platform that runs on a tablet. But the probes have their own firmware that is identical to the firmware that is run with the Windows system by the original manufacturer. So we're having dozens of conversations with the FDA about how, because the probes have their own firmware, it couldn't affect this part of the 60601 testing or this type of cable emission. So
is there kind of a question there where you're kind of soliciting input, or that's just something that you're working on?
No, that's just something I'm working on. But to me, when you guys started that discussion between firmware and hardware and all of that, and software, and I'm having that conversation with FDA right now.
Yep, makes perfect sense.
And it significantly affects what your test plan needs to be.
Yeah. May I ask who you're working for or with?
It's a company in Tucson called Imagine.
And what kind of probes are you using?
Interson.
I used to be the director of marketing for Interson.
Really?
Small world. So Roman, obviously Roman Select, and
Yep. He's had to give us a lot of answers, and his Albert Lee, I don't know if he was there when you were there. Is their engineering manager now. He's also had to help a good bit with the FDA communications.
Yeah, I developed many products for them and did a lot of training videos and went through the FDA. So if I can help you with that, I'm happy to do that. I'm pretty familiar with that. And we got through FDA with a lot of their stuff, so we kind of know how to do that.
Yep. Cool. I'll call you later.
I love it. The magic happens.
This is what I can't tell you how happy that just made me. This grand experiment. Andre, say hello to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Well done.
Morning, Andre.
I was looking for Elliot, Joe. I don't see Elliot.
I see Elliot. He doesn't see me, however. His eyes are closed. We'll get him later.
Oh, someone's got kids in the background.
No, I think that was Larry's dog. Was that Duke?
That's Michelle's puppies.
Okay.
Oh,
My dog has a.
your dog is Luke, right? I said Duke. Tell us an embedded software / firmware story, because I don't even know what question to ask you because it's so over my head.
You're back to me?
Yeah, because you're
Okay.
the
All right,
guy.
I'm the guy. A story. Oh, geez.
Well, what are you working on now, perhaps?
So let's see. You can see over my left shoulder here, kind of one of those splayed out prototype systems that we often work with, and it's a small surgical device for orthopedists and ENTs. It's sort of like a medical Dremel. And so I'm on that particular system. I'm actually writing the user interface and the low-level firmware both. That's not common for me, as I just said, but it's something I can do. And so that's a fun project because I'm doing it, soup to nuts, doing all the firmware and software for that. And then I've got another project going where I'm actually on the V&V side. It's again not something I specialize in or particularly enjoy doing, but it's something I need to have done. So on that one, I'm going through the pain of tracing requirements and writing test plans and all that fun stuff.
I had to look up Dremel, and are you referring to a company?
No. Like a Dremel tool, you would use like a handheld rotary tool.
Apparently, there's a company named Dremel.
Yes.
D-R-E-M-E-L.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, it's a brand.
Yeah, it's a brand, but it's a ubiquitous brand that's like tissue and
Tissue and Kleenex. I got it. Jello and gelatin.
Yeah. Oh my.
Not me.
Is that you, Michelle?
Yes, I'm throwing my voice.
Changing the subject. Jeff, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering actually whether it's whether it's country specific, or even person specific. What I've taken to understand as firmware are things for microcontrollers that are completely self-contained. So if they've got onboard flash and RAM, then that would be a firmware. And in fact, I've got a piece of kit right next to me now that's got external RAM, external flash, and the guys are calling it software. But it's got a lot of I/O, right? And it's like, well, there's a lot of hardware interaction here. So what's that?
Yeah. So for me, that dividing line, overall, it's very fuzzy. That dividing line, I don't care whether the memory is on board, whether it's a system on chip or whether it's a processor microcontroller with other peripherals attached. I just think of firmware as code that's running on a very, very low level, interacting with the hardware directly, and is not upgradable or changeable by the user, as opposed to what's running on your desktop where you install new operating systems and install new applications. That's definitely software, and certainly anything on a server. So, running on the device, there's not a common parlance. This is part of why I struggle as to which one to use. I would call that firmware personally, but I would also call it embedded software.
Here's an idea for you. When some friends of mine were, trying to hire some engineers, the double E's would say, we want firmware people, and the computer science folks, the computer programmers would say we need embedded software folks. So they're talking about the same thing. They just come at it from a different.
Exactly. So in the end, it doesn't really matter. I think either of those terms will work, and often you just have to. So anyway, hope that helps.
Yeah, it was a bit of a leading. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Phil.
I was going to say it was a bit of a leading question actually, because I've got myself into a situation recently where also on this board is a very large FPGA with a very complex signal processing algorithm.
Yep.
Now, I suggested that these guys should apply 62304 to this, so it's the software standard, the IEC software standard to this, because it is so configurable.
Yep.
And is mission critical. And they went, yeah, no, it's not firmware, it's just an FPGA, it's electronics. Yeah, there we go. And it's the client, so I had to back off. They got advice. Their Quara advisors said, no, it's just. I'm like, well, you haven't explained it to them right then.
Yeah, people. I personally, I agree with you. I think that's a complete mistake. People try to get around, find the loophole in satisfying standards like 62304 by putting things in FPGA, and they say, oh, it's hardware now.
Yeah.
bullpucky. It's just
Absolutely.
not. It's just not the case. So, a book that I'm reading right now on safety critical software development had a neat definition that I like. Basically, if your system is simple enough in terms of kind of the number of states, discrete logical states it has, to be able to be tested exhaustively, then you can say it's hardware. Like, so if you have a bunch of logic gates laid out on a PCB and you can actually physically put it in all the different states, then that's hardware. If you can't, it's software.
Right.
And not everyone agrees with that definition. It's the first time I'd read it, but I was like, oh, that's a cool way to put it. And for me, like anything but the simplest FPGA and CPLD circuits, anything but the simplest ones qualifies as software, and I think should be developed as such. So
you're saying anything that's kind of got a inherent convolution in it and some kind of recursive algorithm built into the FPGA, in your mind, probably.
I think so.
I
think so.
I've actually been on projects where you've got a GAL or a power or CPLD, and it's super simple, and it can be stated, as Jeff was just saying, where you can test through everything. But we still put it in the 62304 documentation to avoid the discrepancies, especially from the test house, because they can dig into that if you're going specifically for compliance, like a CV report.
Right, and if you're already doing it anyway for other aspects of your project, then I think it's more effort to try to shoehorn it or separate the two. Like just develop all your stuff in the same way, in a consistent way. Joe, you had a...
No, I want to interject an administrative note. This being the first team meeting of its kind, I may find some of this content worth condensing into a podcast, so that everyone who speaks benefits, at least the very first time. Maybe say, hi, I'm Justin Bushko, and I something, and whatever. And then next time, hi, it's Justin again, or something, so that audio files can relate to who's speaking.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I'll go first. Hi, it's Joe Hage, and I have a question. How often do you work on projects by yourself versus do you have 1099s? Are you like someone that you're one of the 1099s for other people? How do you?
Right. So I'm an S corp, so it's in terms of the payment, it's always corp to corp. I certainly prefer projects where I can wrap my entire arms around it and be the primary developer. So that limits me to smaller projects. I have certainly, throughout my career, worked on projects of all sizes. And one of my clients right now, I am part of a larger team. I am going to be trying to moving away from that to where I much prefer kind of this system that I have here, where it's a small enough system where, yes, I'm working with a hardware team, but I'm the software developer. I will be certainly looking for partners in V&V, because even though I know how to do it and have done it now, that's not my specialty. Justin, I know that you offer that. In fact, this is the first time we're meeting. Hi. But I've already referred someone in your direction saying, hey, I've seen this guy and I know that's one of the services he provides is independent V&V. And I think that'll be, I'll be looking for partners like you to essentially say, I'll do the software, this person will do the independent V&V, and together we can give that complete package.
I appreciate that. Already got the initial reach out. So.
Oh, perfect. Oh, wow. Okay, great. Yeah, Joe, I love.
I'm just so happy. I just love it. Love it.
So I hope that answers your question, Joe. Yeah, I'm mostly interested in smaller projects where I can be, I can completely run the software side, and the more I can move kind of, up the design chain. So helping people with architecture and especially even the system architecture. There's, not to toot my own horn too much, but that's one of kind of the special superpowers I bring to my software development is my systems expertise. My degrees are in mechanical engineering. I was a control specialist for a long time, which is a very interdisciplinary engineering field. And so I've controlled a lot of things and understand how a lot of different electronic and mechatronic components work. And so getting me involved in the earlier design phases, I can save people a lot of time by helping them avoid blind alleys and making those mistakes. Hey, Michelle, there you are.
Hi there.
You went and used a new term for me. I've never even heard of mechatronic before. What does that even mean?
That's kind of the interface between mechanical and electronic and electrical systems. You might have heard electromechanical. That's kind of basically the same thing.
I think I'm the only non-engineer on the phone right now. Well, Larry, you're a regular. Larry spent 21 years with FDA.
And I can still talk.
I'm a chemist, not an engineer.
Okay. All right. Well,
Once upon a time I was, at least.
I'm the only one on the phone who doesn't know what Jeff's talking about.
That's true.
There you go.
Ouch. You just got to own it, you know?
So no, I do own it. And, you know, so strategy guys just are like, you're going to make that, right?
Right.
Okay. Tell me, what was your background? Because I know you were at much bigger shops and now you're making the deliberate choice to be smaller and independent.
Right. So like I said, my degrees are in mechanical engineering. I did a stint in aerospace, working for a small, at the time, small startup that was building unmanned helicopters. And about a little less than a year after I joined, this was my first job out of grad school, we were purchased by Boeing. So went from 55 people to about 150,000 people. But you know, kept our office and our way of doing things for a while. I stayed with them for another 4 years. Then I made the transition to automotive. Worked for a small hybrid car company, and actually we were the Fisker Karma. You may have heard is not a particularly great car, but was a fun project to work on, and that was actually a joint venture between that company and the original designer. So I worked on that. I was the powertrain control. I worked on the powertrain control software. I was the lead controls engineer for that. And then made the transition to medical. And I was a control specialist, and I made a concerted effort to become an embedded software engineer because I wanted to start my own company, and software is a lot easier to start a company around than hardware. And that was kind of a natural evolution of my skill set. So, and having that background, like I said, is useful in what I do. So I've been in the medical space for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years now. You know, worked at a small medical device company, started a firm with a few other partners, exited that about 1.5 years ago, and have been on my own ever since.
While you were speaking, I put in your LinkedIn profile in the chat box, and let me see if I got, you went to, what is this? I don't know how to pronounce it. State Ford University?
I did. Was very fortunate.
Did I pronounce that properly?
It's Stanford.
Oh, Stanford.
Yeah.
The California one.
The California one.
Mm-hmm. Dual concentrations in combustion and controls.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, it sounds complex. Do any of the folks on the call typically dabble in the disciplines that Jeff does, or is that something that you guys typically outsource to someone like Jeff?
So this is Justin. I work in basically doing project program management for startups as well as other companies to do line extensions and embedded control systems. So we run new projects and oftentimes interact with people just like Jeff to do software, hardware, mechanical engineering. So I partner with a lot of people in that realm, 1099s in most cases. And it's always good to have a good bench. So definitely looking forward to talking in the future.
Absolutely.
How about you, Andre? Do you dabble in this?
Well, I have 2 people on staff that do all of our embedded firmware work, microprocessors and front end stuff.
Okay. And Phil, I don't understand the scope of your company out there in the UK.
Yeah, so I have a guy who does embedded systems for me, but we we tend to do very early feasibility. So we'll deliver stuff before it actually goes into like full design. So we do all the early feasibility stuff. So we design such that they can take it forwards for compliance, but we typically get involved at the beginning doing the feasibility and at the end in the verification and validation.
Yeah.
And we'll take that through to preclinical and then let the guys run with it.
And that's a really common, misconception among people who are first developing devices. They develop their prototype, their feasibility prototype with an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi, just get it working, demonstrate the concept, and then they think they're most of the way there. And they're sorely mistaken. So most people who have been through this process have seen that, and it's always a bit of a painful education.
Yeah, so we always try and start on a platform they can take forwards, or at least is expandable to another platform, as they need to put in. We don't do the UI and that stuff. We'll just make it work. Performance.
That's so again on my side, I'll take a project from napkin to the end. I generally don't work a lot on the early stage prototyping. I tend to get involved when they're ready to advance forward. So definitely there could be some synergies with you as well, Phil, once you want to throw it out over the fence.
Absolutely.
Definitely interested in talking through those details.
Yeah.
Andre, I think at the moment you're the only one who has full-time benefit employees. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, Phil, do you have full-time employees? How many do you have?
There's 4 of us, so we're tiny.
And
But
Andre, you have how many?
With total company, you're talking about the whole company or just the?
The
So we
whole
have 34 employees and 12 engineers.
So that's 46 in total or 30 in total?
No, 12 of the 34 are engineers.
Okay. And you're publicly traded, right?
Yes, we're publicly traded.
Oh, and that's right. And this is 3rd generation Italian.
That's correct. Yes, exactly.
And if you visit his website, he has a very charming story about his grandfather in, was it Sicily? Forgive me if I got it wrong.
No, you're right. Yep, all in Sicily.
I know Italians get pissed if you tell the wrong city.
True.
Andre, what's your company, Andre?
My company is ADMtronics, trades under the symbol ADMT. Website is just admtronics.com.
You're welcome to, all of you, I think, can leave a comment in the, don't use Slack for this, just on the side for these calls, there's a place where you can send a message to everyone. So if you want to share your URLs or your LinkedIn, whatever's. By the way, I will take this time to make an administrative note, and that is that when I upgraded the platform to a paid one, I was able to add some things in the profile so that you can help us find you easier. So you can put in your LinkedIn profile here. I'll make it even bigger, actual size. And what I've done is this part is what the actual hyperlink is, and this is what you want people to see. I've chosen to have people see the link so they know it's a clickable link. Some have put their name there. I think it's a little harder to understand. So this is what I would recommend. I use up all the space I can here so that people really understand what it is that I'm offering. And that's my recommendation about that. And I think maybe one of the things, again, this is all fluid and we're doing this for the first time. Maybe when you join future calls, we'll do a quick fast round. That seems to be a catch-all term for me. And you can all come with one interesting factoid to share. It could be something about your discipline. If you got nothing, say you got to see the Joker movie. My God, it was amazingly acted. If that's your thing, fine. But that could be a nice way for us to learn something. When I talked to Larry last week, he taught me something FDA related that I had no idea about. I recorded it because, of course, I have forgotten it. But I remember it was really impressive. And why don't I use that as an entree? Larry, tell us, I know you're a 21-year FDA veteran, still living. That's fantastic. And What was it that you told me that I was like, I had no idea? You remember what it was?
Well, yeah, it was
Joe, can you turn
1345.
off your screen share so we can see each other better?
Of course, sorry. Good call. And actually, probably another good etiquette thing, why don't we mute our mics when we're not talking so that dogs barking and clicks and clatters of keyboards don't get heard. So Larry, you're up.
I'm up. Oh, wow. Well, what we talked about last week, yeah, I just mentioned that I had a client who asked me when the Part 820 was going to go away, the device quality system regulation, and I said, well, what are you talking about? He said, well, I've heard that FDA is going to adapt 13485, and I went on the FDA website and found, yes, in fact, they have announced that they're going to do that, and by the end of next year, it's very likely that the FDA investigators are going to be evaluating companies against 485, which is not dramatically different, but it's. I was surprised because I spent 21 years of my life with FDA. I worked for FDA for 10 years, my early career, and 11 years later. I'm in the middle. I was in the industry for 18 years, so I got two different heads, I guess, a business head and a government head. But anyway. It was surprising to me because FDA is always very jealous of their regulations. The idea that they're going to scrap a regulation for an international standard would have never occurred to me to happen, but apparently it's going to happen. So
I am sure that Michelle has something to say about that.
Oh, I could take over the rest of the call with what I think about that. But long story short, I've talked to several inspectors at conferences that the FDA has been at. And the inspectors are even worried about this because they're highly trained in the quality system inspection technique. Larry, you probably know that inside and out. Yeah. It's a very different inspection methodology from the ISO 13485 approach, which is very much more clause by clause checklist oriented rather than following something through a system. So the inspectors are even worried about the transition because it's going to be a complete mental reboot and shift for them. So, but not to take anything away from Jeff because he's the star of today's show.
Well, one thing I can tell you is government.
What was that, Larry?
I just say government workers do not like change, and you can imagine. I can imagine what you said is absolutely true. The investigators say, "Hey, I'm QSIT certified. I've been doing this for 20 years. There's no way I'm going to switch my inspection technique." So that's FDA's problem.
Well, you know, and another thing, 820 is law. It's regulation. ISO 1345 changes every 3 years. How are you going to change law every 3 years? Even the recognition process for just recognizing a ISO standard can't keep up with a change every 3 years.
Well, I hear you, and perhaps the FDA will reconsider its decision once they get into seeing what it's going to entail from the enforcement standpoint.
Right. But I want to, getting back to Jeff, I have a bit of a provocative question for all the software developers on the call.
Shoot.
Let's discuss Agile versus 62304 versus the documents that I need you to give me to put into a submission for the FDA.
Okay. Let's see if I can kind of distill this down. So, I don't think Agile is often used as an excuse to not do any work. So I personally don't think, like, if you look back at kind of the original Agile manifesto, you know, there's 12 points, and I can't remember them all right now, but it's basically, you know, the most fundamental parts of it are get the business people and the developers in the same room, constantly reprioritize, do things in these short chunks, and then evaluate, as opposed to the waterfall approach where you do everything up front. And when I say people use it as a crutch not to do any work, it's that they think they can get away without doing any design documentation at all. people get in flame wars about it, because then people say, okay, you're doing Agile wrong, and I don't want to get into that too much, but I basically think that you can satisfy 62304 and give the design control document, produce at the end the design control documents that you need, the requirements, the design specification, down at the bottom, the unit testing reports, and then the V&V activities back on up. I think you can produce all of those in an Agile environment. You just you allow the natural process that everyone, you formalize the natural process that everyone does anyway, which is you make requirements, you start writing, and you realize that the requirements have changed, and you go back and you change them. You just make that action, you put that in your software development plan, saying we are going to do this. We are going to implement a subset of the requirements to get a system that works as much as possible for this sprint, however big that is, and then we are going to reevaluate and change requirements as we have found them to be. And I think just as long as it is documented and followed, and at the end you've convinced yourself that it's safe first, and then produced the proof that FDA will accept, I don't see any reason why a company that believes in the Agile process and wants to follow it in whatever form that takes for them can't also satisfy the regulatory requirements. Did that help at all? Or was that just word salad that actually didn't help?
Well, I was just curious of your opinion on it, because I have my own opinion that's not very high of Agile. And then I've also got clients that use Confluence, Jira, Jama, all the requirements tracking, and then they're like, oh, we've got it all, and then they give me this PDF printout that's just garbage. You can't literally follow anything through. It makes no sense. They've used their own lingo,
right? And
it's almost like you need a translation document to turn into the FDA of A, vocabulary of what these words mean to you, and then B, how to make sense of this spaghetti thing that came out of one of these softwares.
And that's
strange to me, because if you if they show it to you in the software, you can see how this went to that, goes to this test and that requirement, and blah, blah, blah. But not one of them can put it out in a document form that is the order in which you would work in one of those softwares.
I don't have a good answer for that. I would love to find an answer for that, because right now, one of my clients, we are not using one of those database-backed services. Like, we have Jira, but that's just for bug tracking. We're not actually using it for the requirement, like the software development lifecycle. Everything's in Word. And so we're having to manually trace, like anytime one requirement changes, you've got to trace it down and manually change it in 6 documents, which everyone thinks is stupid and error prone. And we know it's stupid, we know it's error prone. But at the same time, if you switch to one of those tools, that part of the process becomes wonderful, but then you can't output the reports. And I just, right now, I don't know of a tool that does both well. And I would love to find it. So if anyone knows of one, please tell me.
Well, I actually make my clients, if they're working in one of those, turn their stuff back into a Word document or an Excel file that makes sense.
Sure.
And so now I've learned lessons of quoting software-based submissions to put in lots of extra time to redo their documentation that they're in love with.
Right, which kills my soul, as that's essentially not value add work. It's just an unfortunate shortcoming of the tools, and I don't know. I've maybe that's something I'll end up actually trying to build and charging that windmill, because it just pisses me off that we don't have, like, we have these tools that capture the requirements and everything's database backed and it's all linked, and you just can't produce the reports that you need. Yeah, it's killing me.
So
Justin, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I find that you can work through a given process for any team and start to define where their logic might work and how it might start to produce the correct documentation, and then start to build a framework around them. So I've utilized tools to create multiple queries on the existing database, export those queries, and then drop them into Excel or Word tables to generate the documents that were really required. And generally, the information's there if they knew how to use the tools, right? Because as you mentioned, Michelle, they're just real quick putting a bunch of gibberish down. That's not useful. You've got to go back and say, all this needs to be cleaned up. It has to actually be in requirements speak to some extent. Epic, user story, what it follows something consistent. Allow it to go from Epic to user story to task, etc. Don't jump between tasks and back to an Epic, because then you just lose all logical flow and you can't track it. But with some of the tools, you can do SQL queries and pull out the interdependencies of the items, and also get that traceability directly from the tool. Even though they can't figure out how to do it, the tools usually give you the ability to find it.
And maybe that may be the answer, that there's so much demand for software engineers within companies to automate workflows that people are doing manually, and it sounds like this is just an example of that. Like you can go through and manually create this Word document, or you can invest in having someone write the code for it. And if you're a startup, you're not going to make that investment.
Sounds like Mark Fine here. It sounds like this is an opportunity for a product.
That's what
Yeah, there definitely is. Yeah, there definitely is an opportunity for a product here. Even one that might span across multiple options and have different APIs for different plugins could be a benefit as well.
So I'm actually curious. So that's the kind of thing I'm wondering. I don't know that I would ever actually tackle that product. So the first thing is, like, we're all the people who are facing the pain of implementing it, and we all see the problem. The question is, does anyone who actually would pay for it see the problem? I don't know. It seems like you would have to have gone through the process a couple of times and gotten burned, and want to pay for such a solution your third time around. Or maybe you just do Greenlight Guru and they've got this solved. I don't know. Maybe they're the answer. I haven't actually used their tool, but they certainly are pumping out the content, making me want to try it.
I've never tried it, so if anybody does get on Greenlight Guru and they say it works, I'd like to understand that. I've not used a tool yet that is fully sufficient, unless you get into like Doors or something like that, and now you have to hire an entire admin staff to manage it, and you're paying $100,000 in licensing fees a year. So
we used Greenlight Guru for a while, and it worked partly, but since we were using consultants and direct people, and vendors, it was hard to make it all work. So we're now transitioning to Master Control, which I have no idea if it's going to be better or worse, or.
Well, I can't. I'd love to hear the differences, because I've used Master Control and I'm not a fan. So
I don't like any. It's like electronic medical records.
There's no good choice. They're all terrible.
They're all terrible.
Yeah, and they're all terrible in their own ways, and people like the features they like and hate the other things, and there's just no good option.
I'm going to have to excuse myself for 5 minutes and take my dogs out for a quick bio break. I'll be right back.
In the background here, I'm typing to Nick, who is with Greenlight, and Robin, who is with Master Control. Neither of them are on the call to help us better understand the proposition that they have. I think that was quite relatively split.
Well, I can say Master Control doesn't really offer anything for software documentation. What we're specifically describing that I've seen. It's more doc management.
Andre, Larry, any thoughts?
We used Master Control for a while and dropped it and just went back to our own system.
Yeah.
So you built one from the ground up?
Yeah, we have a kind of a self-brewed one ourselves, but it's just a combination of Excel, Word, and other ways to do V&V and stuff. So
if you have programmers on staff who can go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, these calls are terrible about speaking. No one can understand anything when we both talk. But you and I started at the same time. What was I going to say? Oh, I don't know anything about these tools, but when I hear, yeah, we're using a combination of Excel and Word, that feels really shaky to me.
Well, the problem is that the canned programs, I mean, you have to learn their way of doing it, and then it may not have the end result that you want or that you normally use. So although you might think it's clunky, you know, if you're using a system that you've brewed yourself, it's probably more efficient than just trying to adopt something that doesn't really fit.
So I don't know if she can yet hear me, but Robin Barnes just joined the call and she's with Master Control. So Robin, if you can, say hi, and we're talking about pros and cons of your product and Greenlight Guru and other things that are frankly over my head.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning,
hi.
Robin.
Well, we can hear you but not see you. Can we see you? Do you have a webcam or?
No, I don't.
Oh, you've got to. You've got to get everyone chip in $5. We're going to buy Robin a real computer with a webcam.
Yeah, that's one of the things about working remotely. You know, you don't get all of the bennies that, oh, well, I know, but if you work at the remote control office or the master control office, you can have all kinds of cool things.
And we just had John Tugwell join the call, and I wrote him because he's in the space too. I said, come on the call if you can. He says, I'm driving back from the airport with my daughter to meet my new grandbaby.
Oh.
And that sounds so much more fulfilling than, God bless you all, this phone call. I don't
Sure
know
does.
here.
Sure does. I just got home, but it's sort of crazy. So.
Nice to meet you, John.
Yeah, you too, guys. This should be a lot of fun.
So would somebody sum up what we talked about, Robin behind her back before she showed up? And everyone who's not speaking, go ahead and mute themselves again because I'm hearing an echo.
I guess I'll take a crack at summarizing. So basically, the issue that a lot of us who have developed medical devices have is this fundamental shortcoming of the different tools to manage the life cycle process, both for software and probably for all other aspects of development as well, in terms of tracking the original use cases, how those flow down to requirements, how those flow down to implementation on the software level, say unit tests and actual code check-ins, and then back up the V&V process, verification and validation, making sure all the test cases trace back to requirements, and basically all that traceability that we need to show to prove to the FDA that we've actually done our jobs correctly. And basically the consensus of the group is that no tool manages that entire process correctly. There are tools that are backed by a database that do all that traceability and tracking, but then in terms of outputting the reports, Michelle is saying that they're just completely unacceptable, that the kind of the default way these tools output reports is in no way understandable by anyone on the regulatory side, and so that's kind of the fundamental con. And so because of that, people write their own documents in Word, which they can control the formatting and the language and make it a prose document, but then you completely lose the automatic traceability. So there's just that fundamental shortcoming of not having a tool that can do both sides well. That's the issue. We would all love for there to be such a tool that can handle it all gracefully.
Okay, have you worked with Master Control?
I have not, but other people on the call have.
How recently?
Yeah. So Andre, you want to? I guess Justin hopped off. Andre, you want to hop in?
Yes, certainly. Yes, we did use Master Control, but it was actually a number of years ago, and we opted out of it specifically related to the control of the software. There was really nothing there that helped us on the software side, but it has been a number of years since we used it.
Need to say it again.
Okay. Figured you were going to say that.
Well, it's very different. In the last year, since we've gone through a rebrand, the software is remarkably different than, I started with a company 14 years ago. And, I'll say I thought it was kind of clunky then. Like I didn't even understand it. But over time, they have really worked hard to change it. And if y'all want a demo, I can see if I can get somebody to come and give you a demo, so you can actually see what's going on and what's new.
We don't have, I've yet to identify a featured guest for next Friday. Would you all be interested in that?
I would.
Yeah, sure.
Robin,
Yeah, I have clients.
And I will say,
Clients ask me about it. So.
I'm sorry, Larry, what did you?
Well, no, what I was saying is I have clients who ask me about master control. That's obviously, and the more I learn about it, the better from the standpoint of being able to give them some advice.
okay, there seems to be a consensus here. Robin, what I'm going to do is until, to my surprise, something like 1 in 4, somebody's echoing me. It might be Robin.
I took myself off mute because I just wanted to chime in on Robin's behalf, because I do, Master Controls publishes some of my writing from time to time. So Robin and I talk several times a year. And I know that recently, in the last couple of years, that they've also added a suite specifically for kind of startups and smaller companies as well. So that's kind of it's not I guess, massive installation of master controls that you used to think about back in the day.
This would be a good time for me to interject that while I have a half dozen folks on the network that I personally can vouch for, Michelle among them, each of us is an expert in what we do. So when I talk about having a featured guest every Friday, this is an open call, and I'd love nothing more than to stick within the network so you all get to know one another better. That's the point of this thing. So if you want to send me a message separately, direct message to me, let me know if A, you're interested in being the star of the show 1 week, and if so, what it is that you might cover. And then I'll figure out a way to do some kind of survey for folks, and the ones who get the most votes, or I just don't know how it's going to work. Maybe there's, hey, there's 52 weeks in the year, we can all go. But if there's something really pressing, this is a great way to tell me, Joe, if you know anyone who blank, 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 I'll see if I can't get an expert in that particular discipline to be our guest for the week. So I'm excited about that. Robin, we've clearly identified a desire to have Master Control be the star 1 week. I began to say, to my surprise, 1 in 4 folks who've joined the network so far are outside the US. So far, we're in the UK and Ireland, Australia, France, Israel, the Netherlands, and Finland, and the US. So at least once a month, I'm gonna have a really late call for me, like at midnight my time, to accommodate folks on the other half of the globe. So as I lay that out, I'll let you all know. But Robin, if there's someone available a week from today, which I think is November 1, you can let me know. I've already enlisted my friend Michelle for November 8th. And as I said, you all contact me and we'll figure out a little schedule for us. Jeff, I know you have a hard stop.
Yep.
And this is the hard stop moment. So why don't you give us a closing thought? If you remember nothing else about Jeff and firmware, know this.
I'm really good at it.
Okay, and?
So I wanted to say before I had to hop off, So I'm actually going to be reaching out to each one of you personally. I'm basically doing a set of marketing research interviews to get an understanding of people's problems and concerns and issues with firmware and software development. So just be on the lookout for that. I'm going to, and it's basically, it'll be a 15 to 20 minute call just saying, you know, if you've been burned by this before or have specific worries or thoughts about it, I'm just trying to get a real sense of other professionals in the medical device community of how they view it, because coming at it from a technical perspective is not the same perspective as coming at it from other perspectives. So I'm going to be pinging each one of you, just hoping to pick your brains just very briefly about this topic. So
another way to do that is I can create a channel called Firmware, and you can have that conversation where anyone who wants to join the Firmware channel, and you can ask these general questions and people could comment off one another. Up to you. That I know you have to go, and maybe a topic for those who remain is helping me figure out what do channels look like, because this could balloon into.
But if he talks to each of us and records it, we all have marketing material.
Ooh.
Look at that.
I have this brilliant marketing guy that I pay.
Tell us about.
Tells me I have to record everything I say in case I say something smart.
Yeah.
You should hire him.
Jeff, go, and we'll maybe see you next week.
Absolutely, would love to. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.
So I will take the mic back for a moment and ask you generally, and if you want, I got to figure out, I think it's Robin when she puts her mic on is when I hear the echo. Yep, it's Robin. Robin bad. Everyone else good. Sorry, Robin. She's the loveliest person on the call. No offense to the other lovelies on the call.
I've got to run, but thank you for letting me know. And let me work on seeing if we've got anybody available. We've got our big guns for going to ISPE next week. And so let me see if there's anybody around who can address your concerns about master control. And I'll get back with you on Monday. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okie doke. Nice to see you guys.
Bye. So I'm going to share my screen for a moment. I know that makes everyone else
I also have
small.
to drop off. Sorry, guys.
Okay,
Yes.
Phil. It's dinner time, so we understand.
I've got deliverables. Sorry.
Right. Thank you. See you again. I believe I've learned that when you joined, that the only channels that you knew about were the ones that I signed you up for. That is, like, when you join, everyone's in general. The 5 now, and it wasn't this way when the earliest people joined, so some of them aren't even in it. I intend for every new person to be in announcements, general, industry articles, MDG discussions, and water cooler. And here are all of the channels. I, as the creator of them, am in all of them, and therefore can see all of them. So I plan on making some videos and explainers and onboarding and make it a lot easier for everybody. Oh, I'm supposed to talk with Monir in a half hour, and Monir's on, so I'll talk to him anyhow. This is all quite fluid, and if you have a suggested channel, I'm going to spend some time this probably weekend, and maybe what I'll do is I'll rename this to be RAQA, or I'll archive what's here and start it again. And so I'll have RAQA, and then I'll have RAQA Agile, RAQA QMS, so that they're some kind of logical flow. I don't know what too many channels looks like. I don't know what too few look like. I'm afraid that if it proliferates, people aren't going to know where to go, and then like there'll be 2 people in this one and it never gets any traction. It's still like a chicken and egg, me figuring it out, but just because I'm the owner and have the administrative power, I'm just building this for your utility. So you guys helped me shape this product that you signed on for, and I'm grateful. And boy, this first call, I'm just so happy with the connections, and it just so happens that you all do the same thing. Let's get some marketers on the call next time. But I'm glad you all speak the same language, more or less, and understand what everyone is saying.
So I'm a marketer, but you know, we all have to talk to each other, obviously.
Yeah, no, quite agreed. So if you want to either, does anyone want to share a thought about how they would like to see the channels? And if not, that's fine. I'll go off and figure it out myself.
Yeah, so I think what you described as far as not being able to locate stuff might be a challenge, but having only one channel for like regulatory quality definitely wouldn't be enough. For example, I've seen a lot of like labeling and packaging, sterilization stuff being posted.
Mm-hmm.
And if it remained to be prolific in that, then you would just ignore that channel altogether if you didn't want to see that stuff. So
which
I think you
reminds
would lose control of some topics.
Among the things I've yet to teach you all is if you right click on any given channel, I don't know what starring a channel does yet, but I do know what muting it does. So if you're getting notifications and you're like, oh crap, I don't need this, neither do I. You can mute it. That doesn't mean that you're not in it. That means that when you show up, you show up. And if you see that it's bolded, then you know that something has been said since you were there last. You can leave it, you can join it. And again, I don't know what starring does. Maybe it puts it towards the top. I haven't figured that. Well, hell, let me star. Best
I think it might also on RAQA be helpful to have, but maybe US and EU and like some geography specific. So
all
if you're not,
welcome.
Yeah, if you're not in the going to do business in the EU, you just don't even bother reading that
so
channel.
As you can see, I just experimented and found that starring puts it in a separate bucket for you, for the things that are most interesting for you. Perhaps one of the things we could do, and this would be helpful for me, and because you're on the call, you get to decide what are the major food groups in the first place, like the main categories. So I was saying RAQA. Do you want to have a regulatory channel which is distinct from a quality channel, or do you want RAQA and then RAQA FDA, RAQA QMS? So
can you have subtopics with Slack?
Yes. So the way I would do it, for example, is RAQA would be a topic. I can't nest it. I can't do that, but I can have the very next topic be called RAQA-QMS. So that would show up there. And if it were, RAQA-sterilization or whatever. So what I'm asking you all for is, what are the top level categories that you'd like to see? We'll start with RAQA. Is it RAQA or is it regulatory and quality as two separate channels? Michelle, your name is Lean RAQA. What do you want?
I think the two separate channels makes more sense to me.
Okay, so shall it be?
In a former life, I would never say that you could split RA and QA, and I don't think from an organizational point that you can and have any meaningful type of system. But for discussion purposes, I personally don't want to see discussions about CAPA and complaints and whatnot in the regulatory side.
Yeah, critical dimensions and all kinds of low-level stuff that probably could be in quality.
And I would say, I would dare say, based off of some of the comments so far, that we might could even have quality system and quality engineering.
I agree with that.
Because you get, like Justin just said, you've got critical dimension, tolerancing, labeling, packaging, sterilization.
Okay, but
all
here's
of
the
that
thing.
are very engineering related decisions. They're
agree
regulatory
with that.
requirements, but those are engineering decisions.
So, for example, at the moment, we are like 55 strong. If I were to have, you know, a subdivision for every potential quality topic, Michelle and Justin will be in that
Well, I
channel,
think
and it'll
you
just be
probably
the two of you. There'll be no
regulatory,
discussion.
you could have regulatory, quality system, and quality engineering.
Well, but you're talking about, I mean, we're going to have, 50,000 people here at some point, right?
No, I don't anticipate that ever to be the case. I really don't know what the high water mark will be, but color me surprised if we get more than 200 to 250. I don't know.
I'm not charging extra for anything that's happening right here, right now.
So regulatory and quality are clearly two. Marketing's one, and I used to call it marketing, sales, biz dev. But I think in short order, I'll have someone who focuses exclusively on sales, who would be willing to kind of, there really is no leader of a group. I mean, while Michelle has the expert flame on her profile, that doesn't mean that anyone else isn't an expert in regulatory and quality. I'm just offering to people who join and just don't know who to call that I can vouch for Michelle. That's what that means. Are there other topics that you want to be main? So, you know, would it be regulatory FDA, Larry, or would FDA be a main category because there are a dozen things that you put under that?
Well, most people in the regulatory world are obligated almost to be familiar with international also, because the companies sell there and then regulatory has to get them into the country. So you could separate it to FDA and international, but.
Okay, so that, I'm afraid how deep this will go and how confusing it'll go, because that's not the way to spell it, is it? No, it is not the way to spell it. Screw it.
Go spell check in Excel.
Third, because if we then say US international, are you going to say, you know, because you're going to have a topic that is US FDA, do you talk in the US one or the FDA one? So we're going to have to be clever about our nomenclature here. This is not something we're all going to solve right now, but I'd ask you all, again, in the spirit of this is your tool. I'm just the one who gets to choose the channels and kick people out if they're spamming, but it's yours. So help me design it the way that, and this is your discipline. I wouldn't know what to put. I'm perfectly comfortable having a marketing one that isn't marketing SEO, marketing branding, marketing content. Nobody needs that degree of, that's just not the way I approach it. So I'll leave that as a general homework assignment. A good one for me to figure out is those things happen, and Andre, you're on the call. So what's manufacturing? Is manufacturing a main one and then secondary is operations, or is operations a main one? What is packaging? Where does sterilization go? Are these subcategories or main categories? Again, when new people come, what I'll do is I'll figure out, maybe you'll be in an Excel spreadsheet. So when someone joins, I'm going to have a much more developed onboarding than the haphazard way I've treated all of you. I apologize, but it's kind of a figuring out as I go. So that when someone joins on the first day, I can say, here are all of the available channels. Click on the ones that are of interest, and they'll know that they can star, and they'll know that they can mute. I'm learning it now.
Just one comment, Joe,
yes,
is that
please.
when I first went on and I saw the whole list there, I'm just concerned that if there's a real long list, you know, it just might become tedious. You know, if you could maybe use a treed function where you start off with a number that, let's say, manufacturing, marketing, operate, so they're only looking at a group, and then drill down and choose the ones that they want. I think that's not as intimidating.
I agree. I need to figure that out. I don't know how well Slack plays with, I know there are plenty of apps. I'm sure they figured this out, but if you think about like a website, I'll talk language I understand, where you have a primary navigation and then sometimes you hover and there are like 3 things and then you can hover, and maybe there's a way to do that with channels so that you can click those and you get joined that way. I don't know yet, but it'll be at least a way that I can let people know what the channels are. Alan, you've been very quiet this morning. This is your invitation to turn on your mic, Alan, and say hello.
Hello.
Hold
I did have one thing I throw out there for a subdivision for, I think it would be probably quality. You could do pre-market and post-market. That might help split out something that's more design oriented versus something that's more your post-market surveillance, CAPA related, and trying to collect that information.
How about this, if I may, if anyone's willing to take the lead, can I put someone in charge of regulatory, maybe my expert if she has time, and recommend the channels and sub-channels instead of me trying to collect it? Or if you would like to gently say thank you but no thank you, if any of my other engineering friends or regulatory friends, you know, is design and development a package relative to engineering, relative to all these things? So that's kind of where I'm going with that. We can change the topic now. I conceived these as being hour-long calls. These are not supposed to be marathons. You can all say, yeah, I've had quite enough of listening to Joe. Or you can stay on all day, I don't care. So there's no obligation. Hang up whenever you gotta go, whatever. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about today as a group? Or is there something, maybe as I suggested earlier, you know, one parting comment about, you know, think about this as you go about the next week. The next time you FDA this, Larry says you should blank. And the next time you electrical engineer that, Alan says you should this. Just little shares that would be interesting. Does that appeal to anyone? I'll go first. When you do your LinkedIn profiles, do one like Michelle's, because I helped her with it. And I think it is the very best one that I have seen. And I'll tell you why.
She had an excellent consultant help her.
An excellent consultant, but we used up all the space here. And all of these are keywords that LinkedIn cares about when people are searching. She has a nice photograph. Not everybody does. We used this space to talk about her value proposition. And we used the about to the character of how many things that we could talk about before LinkedIn said that's quite enough.
And this is one area where Joe pushed me a good bit to make it not your typical, you know, a lot of people use LinkedIn almost like a CV. And so instead of using it to talk about me, it was talking about my business and what I do for my clients.
It's got to be about them. And at the end, we made her, you know, just show a little personality. She has a weakness for tequila and anything barbecued. And if any of you smile right now, Andre did, Justin did, Alan did, that's the reaction that other people will have when they see it. So Justin can say, I love going hiking with my wife and daughter, and that makes him human and not just some engineer that's just good at engineer stuff. He's a real human. So that's Joe's advice for the day. Does anyone else want the screen to show there, to do a show and tell, or you just want to tell us something interesting to teach us? Who wants to go next?
I think I've actually got to go next.
Okay.
Because I've got to go.
All right, what's your thing for us this week?
Oh, so I'm Michelle with Lean REQA, for those of you who have not figured that out yet. You know, you know, every year, Joe, we do the bit about the FDA guidance documents, how many are coming and whatnot. And for it's even getting a lot for me to keep up with. I used to like think it was fun and you know, we're going to unravel, but they issued 4 in a single day about the 510K program. Every type of 510K that you could do has a new guidance document for it, plus the process in general. And so for me, this is one of the reasons why I'm super passionate about helping startup and small medical devices, is because I'm a professional and I know how to read these. And I barely want to keep up with this stuff. And then how is anybody that doesn't know what they're doing or doesn't know the ins and outs already of the 510K program gonna successfully navigate it as a startup? So it just further goes to my point. Things are getting more complex. They're not getting simpler. It's not getting easier to do on your own. In fact, I think every year that I'm a consultant, it seems like clients more and more and more need a consultant to do it properly.
Thank you. I have muted myself because I don't know if you can hear Elliot snoring now. Who wants to go next? And Michelle, drop off whenever you like, or keep us on as background music. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next, Joe.
Yeah.
Just a comment off the topic of what you just said, just something that what's occurring with us right now is, you know, we have BSI as our authorized body, and, you know, 13485 and CEs. And just to let you know, because of the situation with the MedSap and the MDD, you know, they're having trouble getting auditors. And so they've pushed off 2 of our audits. So now in the year of 2019, we're going to have four audits in 1 year. And I've really complained to BSI because it's really a problem with them not being able to get auditors, and they crunched them all together. And for a small company like ours, I'm the lead quality person, and I've got 1 engineer that does quality, but we're also operational people, and I'm the president of the company. So 4 audits is really interrupting with our business now. And I've tried to bring this up to the upper level of BSI, and I got a deaf ear. They just say, well, you got to do these audits or you're going to lose your certification. So it's a tough situation right now.
I was just having a BSI conversation last night with a new connection, and as is often the case, I get, so Joe, if you know anyone who needs blah, 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 let them know about me. And I said, and he was talking to me a little bit like, you know, I'm not sure if you know who BSI is. And I was like, believe me, I know who BSI is. And I've tried to have them do a webinar for us, but no one's ever, you know, done one. And he said, yeah, we're not gonna, because we can't handle the business that we have, which is a surprise to no one on this call.
Right.
I was going to say, second that emotion, Andre. I've got a couple of clients that have BSI, and they're in that exact same situation you're in, particularly the ones that need the MediSap as well, and that we're relying on BSI for that. They're just
Are we still at a count of 5 notified bodies who qualified for MDR certification?
Yep. Okay. And by now they were supposed to be kicking out a couple a week, and we have been
a couple of notified bodies, you mean? That would
competent authorities were supposed to be rolling now and starting the designation process, and we should have seen a lot more designated by now, but they haven't designated anybody since number 5, and that was a little over a month ago.
Michelle, a question on your clients. Have you seen that the inspection length is going longer? Because, you know, before we used to have a day and a half, and now each one is stretching to 2.5 to 3 days.
Yeah, and the number of audit hours for sure has increased, and irrationally so. Say you have a 3-shift operation, and you've got, you know, let's say 100 people, but 75 or 80 people all do the same job. They increase the audit hours based off of the number of employees.
Ridiculous.
And I want to say it's something as low as like the difference between 10 employees and 11 employees can add a audit day. And so there's no logic to 90% of the operations all doing the exact same activities. And that doesn't mean that there's new or different things to look at or that much more things to look at.
Yep.
So.
Frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm done complaining.
Are you though? But you are for now.
For you guys.
Justin, you want to go next? Alan, Larry, or Mark? One thing to share?
Well, Joe, it seems almost all the times we get together, I'm outnumbered by regulatory QA people. And I'm a marketing product development person. So I just want to put out that I've put together a team of the most outstanding engineers, scientists, clinical people, whatever, and we're kind of looking for a project. We're all, seniors, super experienced. And I just want to read what I've got, my mission statement on my wall. I work with smart people I like on interesting and innovative projects that make a positive difference in the world and are financially rewarding. If I can do those 5 things, I'm a pretty happy guy.
Okay.
So that's all I got. And this has been great, Joe. This is a great job. This is a fantastic kickoff.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. I suspect I'll enjoy each week. It's something to look forward to. Okay, that leaves 3 gentlemen. Which of you 3, if you can say, I pass, I've got absolutely nothing interesting to say.
I want to second the compliment of the idea of getting the different disciplines together. Like I'm not a software firmware guy, but I know a lot more about it now than I did when I turned my the meeting on. And I think that's a real benefit of this group. It's multidisciplined, and I'm looking forward to for future meetings.
Thank you. I do too. And when I have my events, that's the spirit of fast rounds. It's people talk for just 3 minutes, but you understand what they do. And now somebody says, do you know anyone who does firmware? And you can say, yeah, I know a guy. I can't vouch for him, but he certainly sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Alan? Justin?
Sure, why not? So I guess I'll just share something that's relevant because it's on my screen right now. So I've actually been working on a endoscope product, and I've been going through adverse events, and I don't know if it's probably not something that jumps up on people's radar, but the FDA consistently issues reports about problems with basically reprocessing endoscopes and people getting infections off of endoscopes. There are so many adverse events on that. I've been sitting here reading about them for multiple hours now. So hopefully I didn't ruin everybody's week, but the next time that you go in for a scope, make sure and go to a place that reprocesses well, because that's apparently a huge problem.
And you personally are an expert in scopes.
That is true. I have to have them happen to me on a more frequent basis than most people.
So Alan, we should definitely talk.
All right.
Okay. But actually, let's see. I'll try and throw something over to you, Mark, on the chat so we can talk offline. But anyways, that was my lesson of the week.
Okay, Justin.
So one thing over the last couple of weeks, I'm seeing more and more of, as you talk to other industry professionals and experts in different areas, generally I used to think, okay, somebody says they're an engineer, that's what they're good at. But I've been finding more often, as you start talking through the details, somebody may have 20 years experience in a completely different area. So you might be talking to, Andre here, who's doing some manufacturing, but he could have been an expert in something else for the first 20, 25 years of his career. And he just doesn't bring it up because that's not what he's doing today. So I think those are good relationships to build and understand.
Good point.
Fair enough.
And similarly, Justin, I've seen people get bad regulatory advice, and not necessarily because the advice with how to deal with the FDA was bad or wrong, but it was inconsistent with how the people had put their business plan together and what they wanted to market their intended use for. And so what their regulatory person was helping them accomplish was 100% opposite of what they had put in their pitch deck for investors.
I can see that.
Mhm.
Yep.
There are 3 more people on the call, none of whom are showing themselves or have their mics on, but if you can hear me, Joe, John, or Monir, and want to add to our discussion and tell us a thing, you're welcome to do so now.
No, I think this is John.
John.
Fascinating watching how this has grown from when I first heard about you and the issues with LinkedIn and everything else. And I'm 76 now, and I should have retired probably 10, 15 years ago, but I still enjoy what I'm doing, consulting with either robotics or hearing health or other startups. So I think this is a great forum for discussing the things. I don't think we need to spend too much time discussing the categories in too much detail, because they'll take a form of their own as they grow. It's just like people try and have smart numbering systems. And then, of course, the computer, eventually they forget there's a computer that's its job to do that. So don't worry too much about how you break it up into different, it'll take a form of its own, I think. But I like what you're doing. I like the forum arrangement here, where we don't care what our backgrounds are, but we're all trying to work on getting through regulations, quality, and everything else about introducing medical devices. And I'm actually, one of the companies I'm working at, Rob Packard, did their document control system. So yeah, I've sort of talked to Rob as well.
He will be on a future call for sure. John, where do you live?
South Carolina, a small town called Greenwood.
How far are you to Charleston?
2.5 hours.
Okay. It just so happens that yesterday I had a conversation with the head of economic development for Charleston.
Yes, growing, boy.
And he is especially eager. In fact, I half expect him to be on the call today. He's thinking about having a medical device conference there.
Yeah.
Because he's positioning it, well, I won't put too many words in his mouth, but what I took away was kind of like Research Triangle Center North.
Yes, there's definitely an interest.
Get the word out. So, boy, it was so interesting. I recorded that call, and it will be a future podcast, so you can look for it on your radio dial. And speaking of podcasts, Monir is here.
Hello.
And you make medical devices easy.
I hope, yeah. This is the objective. For those that don't know me, so I'm managing the website called Easy Medical Device. I'm making also some podcasts, some videos on my YouTube channel, and I had the chance to have Michelle and Justin on my podcast, which were a really great episode. The idea here for me is really to try to educate people related to the regulations and also to support them. So I just started my own journey now, just to be by myself. But before, I was working since 15 years on the corporate industry on medical devices, and lastly with Johnson & Johnson. So now I'm by my own. So I'm discovering this new world to be an independent and to do by myself my computer things, to try to understand how all this is working. So it's a great adventure. So yeah, I'm really happy to start that. And I didn't know about this this call and everything. So Joe, thank you for inviting me and showing me that. Really interested to participate to that and to see if there is some topics that we can discuss and maybe where I can help also. And it can be also a source for me in case there is some big questions to invite some SMEs also on my podcast or here also to answer the question.
Through the list of people on our network as guests to last you through the year 2022. So that's good. But Monir, if I'm not mistaken, your consulting time, even as an independent, you're 80 to 85% booked already with the client that was your last employer, isn't that right?
No, it didn't went through. So now I'm having I did find some customers. So I'm working now with some customers, but it's more like 60% of my time for now. I still try to get also to keep some time also available for continuing to do all about the blog and the podcast and inviting people. So it's also something that I want to keep. But yeah, mainly I'm on my way now to also try to find some customers to help them. I think I have the same also passion as Michel, so really to help some startups and small companies because I know that these are the ones that really need some support. And we saw that also when I talked, for example, with Justin on his podcast. So there's a lot of some difficulties, if I can say, for them to understand how, for example, FDA is working, or maybe the European Union regulation, how they are working. So I'm really here to help also and to make it easy, as I mentioned with my website, to make it easy for them.
So you're located.
By the way, this is John. I love your website. I've been using it for about a month and have been recommending and referring other people to it. It's great for people getting started, as well as those who've been around a while, but just want to refresh memories. Great site.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I really, as I said, I really try to have as much people as possible that really want to bring some message to the community. And so if there is some people here that are really interested also to bring some message, if they have a hot topic and they know how to solve that. So it's something that also I can display on my channel. So let me know and we can have some time to discuss about that.
That's great.
Monir and Michelle and I will all be in London on the 17th of February. Joe, I think you are a drive perhaps away from Trafalgar Square, are you?
I'm Joe. I'm sort of I wasn't expected to join the conversation until Joe sent me his invite. Thank you very much. It's the first time I've used the platform as well. I'm based in Cambridge in the UK, so we're only about 40 miles away from Trafalgar Square. So I'm looking at the details. I'm very interested in turning up to see more people and sort of get more information in this space.
That's
so just to introduce myself, I'm CEO of a company called Cognidocs. We do document management software, and we came from the semiconductor industry, so we work in chip design. In the last few years, we've been working more with ISO 13485 certified companies, and we're starting to work in life science companies as well now. So I'm learning as we go through. I've had a few conversations with Monir here as well. We've done a couple of blogs and ebooks, and we're trying to actually get a great solution for you guys. So I'm being very quiet here and not sort of selling my product or anything, but hopefully I'll get to learn and sort of get to know a few more of you, and hopefully I can show you what we can do, and hopefully I can have one Friday slot.
In a future week, why don't we have you give us a demo of what you're working on? And because this is all, I'm the outlier here. When you all were talking about your disappointment with some of the software packages out there for regulatory quality and control, I wonder if Joe's product solves the shortcomings of that which is out there. Again, I can't frame it well enough, but I don't think Joe was on the call for that part of the call.
I caught a bit of it, but where we actually come from, we give you a hell of a lot more flexibility than you would with your master controls and your green light gurus, but we're not that full-blown EQMS suite either. So we came from, chip design was our place, and document management is at the heart of the solution. So I would love to show you what we do. We've got some really interesting features which I don't see anywhere else, and I'm slowly but surely trying to shout a bit more about that, because we're a small company, but we want to grow.
Well, I know a guy who can help you tell the story.
Who's that? Yeah.
Just one thing for regarding Joe. So he has really a great ebook regarding the MDR. So it's something that I had to read, and also share that with with the community, and they really liked it. So just for you, Joe Hag. So because mainly, as you were asking me some resources, maybe this one can be a good one to add to the resources that you were asking.
In fact, that is a great segue. I will show you, and this is again part of my learning process of how to onboard people. You all have access to a library of resources, and I will make a share link here, and I will put it in the chat window for GoToMeeting before I do it more formally with everyone. Send. So I think you'll need to, I'm not sure exactly how it works for someone who's never used Dropbox, if you have to sign in or whatever, but at the moment, the resources that I've collected from folks on the phone are Monier's given me 3 things, Rob's given me 2, Michelle's given me 1, and I'm looking to build this library of tools that anyone who joins the network can immediately grab. Marketing is just me so far, and this is a recommendation that I wrote for a client. They paid me handsomely for it. I don't mind sharing that they paid me $4,500, and I just took out their name and their category, and I made it generic enough that anyone can use it. So I'd argue that this is a valuable resource, and it is for someone not too distant to space from the one that you guys all play in, the recommendations of how they can better market themselves. So you're welcome to that. But the reason I bring this up now is, as I said before, each of you is an expert. And whether you have a flame next to your name or an apostrophe or whatever, everyone knows what they're doing here, or they wouldn't be on this call. So anything that you want to put in the library for broad availability for people who choose to be part of our tribe, I welcome that. Send it to me, and I will make sure it's in an appropriate format and easy to follow. Let me draw a formal close to our call. We've been on for an hour to 100 minutes now, and I know I could keep talking, but I'm sure at least one of the other 9 on this call need a bio break, because I know I do. Monier, why don't you stay on at least, because you and I were going to talk anyhow. And anyone who wants to keep us on as background noise, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, go away, and I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.